Familiar, you're familiar. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
Hello students, so welcome back to my YouTube channel again. Okay, now in this video part number 3, okay, I am going to explain you the concept called impulse. Okay, so in the previous video we just discussed the concept called Newton's second law, right? So it is the extension to understand what is Newton's second law, how it is practically applicable in the daily life. Okay, so in order to understand that applications of Newton's second law, we have to know what is the concept called impulse. Okay, just to go through the statement of impulse first, you see. So we can define the impulsive force as a very large force. It is a very large force acting on a body for very short interval of time. Okay, so that means to see the impact, particularly to see the impact of a force, okay, we need to apply that force in a very short interval of time. Okay, then the impact will be very large. Okay, can you understand this? So with one example at least, I think it is very clear for you, right? So you just consider a simple example where the cricketers are playing, okay, where a ball is hit by a bat. Okay, you can see that a bat is just hitting the ball in a very short time interval. So what is the impact? The ball may go to sixer or it may go to 4. Okay, that means it is moving with a very large distance. So what is the force acting on the ball? Okay, so that force acting on the ball may not be very large, but it is acting in a very short interval of time. That is why the impact of that force is very large. Okay, that is called the effect of impulse. Okay, so with that example, you try to understand the concept of impulse now, right? See, I have written the same example here. When a bat hits the ball, okay, the force jumps from 0 at the moment of contact to a very large value within a very short time. Okay, because the force, what is the force at the beginning? I mean, the moment it contact the ball, it is 0, right? The force is 0. The moment it contact the ball, immediately the force acting on the ball rises to a maximum value. Okay, so that's why you have to say force increases, jumps from 0 at the moment of contact to a very large value, okay, within a very short time, and then abruptly returns to 0 again. Okay, it is increasing and then decreasing suddenly. Okay, so you can plot the graph also like that. See, force acting on the ball, so it touches at the point A. So what is the force? 0. Then it increases to a maximum value. Then once it is transmitting its force to the ball, it has to come back, isn't it? The force come back to 0 again at point B. Okay, so you have to see the time interval T1 and T2. Okay, so within this time gap, okay, the force is delivered to the ball already, right? So it takes more impact on the ball. So the difference of T2 minus T1, we can call it as delta T. So what is the delta T is here? What is the delta T is called here? There is a time interval or time gap, or the time of contact of the bat to the ball, okay, where the force is transmitted from bat to ball. Okay, so like this. What is this F average then? So it is not the maximum force, the peak is here. Okay, so this is the maximum force and this is 0 force here. So average of these two, we can call it as average force here. Okay, so we can draw the average force line here, right? So now how to calculate the impulse, how to calculate the impact of the force, or you call it as impulse from this graph. Okay, let's consider this figure as reference to calculate the impulsive force. Okay, see, in this case, as I told, delta T is the short interval of time. We calculate it as T2 minus T1, and F average, as I told, is the average force acting on the ball during the time interval. Okay, that is delta T. And now if I consider the momentum, okay, as you know how to calculate the momentum. So if you consider the change in momentum as delta P, let us say, okay, P is actually the momentum. It is given by mass into velocity, right? So you consider here the momentum is going to be changed during the application of the force, right? So delta P is considered as now the change in momentum during the same time interval delta T. Okay, now apply the Newton's second law. So according to Newton's second law, the rate of change of that momentum, you have to consider rate of change of momentum according to the statement of Newton's second law, right? So that is delta P by delta T. Okay, so it's nothing but what? According to Newton's second law, it must be the force. Okay, so if you calculate that force, you will get the average force acting on the body. Okay, so F average, F AV means F average bar you have to put here because it is a vector quantity. So is equal to delta P bar by delta T. So by cross multiplication, F average into delta T is equal to delta T. So that means the product of the average force acting on the body during the time interval delta T, okay, gives the change in momentum. Okay, so we can write that now as the impulsive force. Impulsive force means it is the product of force and time, isn't it? Impulsive force is equal to change in momentum, right? So suppose if I consider the exact force acting on a body at a particular instant of time t, let us say, not the time interval you take, t only, then how do you calculate the impulse? If F bar acts on the body for a time t, okay, so time interval is also very negligible, so it is just t, instant time you can say, right? So F bar acts on the body for a time t, then the impulse of the force is just the product of the force into time. Okay, isn't it? So force into time is the impulse of the force. So you can denote that impulse of the force as the parameter J bar, J, capital J bar you have to put. That is nothing but it is the impulse of the force given by product of F bar into time t. Okay, so J bar is equal to F bar into T is called what now? Impulse of the force. What is the unit then? F bar unit Newton, T unit is second in SI system, so Newton second. So you can measure the impulse of the force as Newton second in Newton second. So that unit is same as the momentum also, right? So impulsive force is having the same unit as the momentum. Clear? Okay. Further, you just look at the graph again. So from this graph, directly you can calculate the impulsive force. How? So you just construct a rectangle here. See, from the initial point T1 A and point B. Okay. So consider the average force also. So from the average force you draw a horizontal line, so that you can draw the vertical line from A to D and B to C. So that you will get a rectangle ABCD. Okay. So what is the use of taking that rectangle ABCD here? So you can calculate the area, okay, the total area under the average force, okay, that area under the graph, area under the rectangle easily can be calculated using the graph, right? So that is helpful to calculate the impulsive force of the bat acting on the ball here. It is an example here, right? See, from the graph, so what is F bar here? So this magnitude you have to take, isn't it? Because along y-axis we have F bar here. So AD is the force acting on the body. So similarly AB is the time interval, right? So you take that. So F bar is equal to AD and delta T is equal to AB. So product of these two. So F bar into delta T is called what? Impulse, isn't it? So impulse is equal to, now instead of F bar and delta T, I will take it as now AD into AB, right? So in the graph AD into AB, so gives what? Exactly area of the rectangle, correct? So AD into AB is equal to area of the rectangle ABCD. That gives the impulse. Clear? Now let us see some more examples in which how the impact of the force can be reduced based on the concept of impulse. Okay? So illustrative examples of impulsive force. See the first example. So the first example is all about very well known for you, isn't it? So in the cricket, a cricket player extends his hands forward and then move backward after making contact with the ball. Why he is doing so, See, whenever you want to catch the ball, you will extend the hands like this, and then the moment you get the contact with the ball, immediately will pull back his hands. Isn't it? Why? So, while doing so, he is trying to reduce the impact of the ball. That means impact of the force of the ball on his hands. So, to avoid the injury, you can say, to avoid the more injury on the hands, and also you can catch the ball firmly also. Isn't it? See? This reduces the force of impact. Okay, that is the physics here, right? So this reduces the force of impact due to extension of time of impact. Basically, the average force acting on the hands by the ball is given by what? According to Newton's second law. So rate of change of momentum, isn't it? So that is delta P by delta T. So as the time of contact, okay, time of contact increases, time of interval increases for the impulse, then automatically, so the value reduces. What do you mean by that value? So that force acting on the hands will reduce. So that is what you have to consider the impact here. So reduces the force of impact on the hands. Okay, while doing so, correct? In this example, you can understand how we can reduce the force of impact by extending the time of impact here. Clear? Okay. Now look at the second example. So where when a car goes out of control, suppose a driver is feeling that the brake is failed, how he has to drive. So when the car is moving out of control, so he has to look surrounding where he has to hit the car so that the impact should be less on the car, isn't it? Okay, so he cannot just go and hit to the wall, right? So he will drive to up to certain distance, and he will find some kind of soft obstacle, right? See, when a car goes out of control while driving, so we would prefer to hit something soft, okay, hit something soft like haystack or a plant bush, etc. Then something hard, okay, like wall. You don't prefer to hit to something like a hard wall, concrete wall, etc., isn't it? So it is because by hitting to soft obstacles, he extend our time of impact. Okay, so he extend the time of impact, then thereby reduces the impact of force again. Okay, so once he is able to reduce the impact of force, then there will be less damage to the car, correct? So in this example, we can understand again how the impact of the impulsive force can be reduced by extending the time of impact, right? Okay, now next example is again, so automobiles are provided with spring system. So while purchasing any new vehicle, you will ask, so whether that vehicle is having very good suspension or not. Okay, so on the seats they should be provided with some kind of springs, hard springs should be there to absorb the shocks. Okay, so that is called shock absorbers also, right? Okay, so automobiles are provided with spring systems. They are called suspensions or shock absorbers, as I said. Okay, to minimize the damage to the automobile, not only to automobile, of course, to the person riding the automobile also, isn't it? Okay, look at the next example. A person jumping from an elevated position to the ground. You think that a person is jumping from elevated position to the ground. Okay, so he will bend his knees the moment he get contact to the ground. Okay, he will bend his knees and then he can stand firmly. Otherwise, what happens? Just he will break his bones. That's it. Correct. So you can understand that a person jumping from an elevated position to the ground bends his knees. Okay, upon making the contact. So in that way again is extending the time of contact, okay, across the knees, and then he will reduce the force of impact. Okay, so force of impact is reduced, and so you will feel that it is possible to jump, okay, without much damage to his body. That's it. Okay, so these are some live examples you can understand with the help of impulsive force concept and the concept of Newton's second law also. Clear? So you write some more examples, okay, while making the notes. Clear? Okay, at the end of this video, let us consider the simple concept how to derive Newton's first law from second law. Okay, so we can prove that Newton's first law is just a special case of Newton's second law only, right? See, suppose you can consider the Newton's second law first of all as F is equal to ma, right? And suppose if F bar is equal to 0, what do you mean by that? If the force acting on the body is 0, right? Then from this equation 1, that is Newton's second law equation, so A is equal to 0. If F is equal to 0, A is equal to 0. What do you mean by that? So rate of change of velocity dv by dt is also equal to 0. So when dv by dt equal to 0, we say that the velocity is constant. It should be constant as per the derivative. If v is constant, then only dv where v is constant, okay, dv by dt is equal to 0. Differentiation of a constant is equal to 0. So v is constant here. So that means if no force acts on the body, there will be no change in the velocity. It remains constant. So what is the statement? If no force acting on the body continues to be at rest. No change in its velocity. That means velocity remains constant. Okay. No acceleration, no velocity when F is equal to 0. Okay. So in that way we can justify the Newton's first law basically from Newton's second law also. Okay. See, thus Newton's first law of motion is simply a special case of Newton's second law. Clear? Okay. So with this explanation, okay, I am going to stop it now. So in the next video, I will explain you Newton's third law. Okay. See you in the next video then.